Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your host, Cyril Gerald Quinn, episode 857, season 15, as we discuss a week, another week of NFL football. We are now into, amazingly, a week where it completed 11 weeks of the NFL season. We are headed towards a week number 12, as week 11 is in the books. Week 12 will be soon upon us in the next couple of days, that you'll have, of course, a Thanksgiving triple header, um, which I think two of the games, all three games could be competitive. You have a nice, the hot Detroit, you have a Detroit team that's playing better, so they shouldn't be a walkover, and certainly looking forward to the Minnesota New England New England Thanksgiving night game. But before we get to all that, of course, I'm going to be solo tonight. Hopefully, we will be joined by Mr. Sapp next week. I'm sure he's much happier this week with his Buffalo Bills coming off a victory, snapping their two-game losing streak at the over the Cleveland Browns, and that's where we're going to begin. Well, we're going to begin as always with our themes of the week. Themes: bounce back and smoking mirrors. A lot of teams, there are a few teams out there who are just not that real, and they're starting to get exposed. We saw them get exposed, three teams in particular. But as always, we're going to begin talking about the Buffalo Bills with all the thoughts. Buffalo gets a much needed victory over Cleveland, 31-23. The game really wasn't even that close. This game was like 25-10, 25-10 for the better part of the second half. Late in the second half, Buffalo completely controlled this game out. Jacoby Brissett had a fumble that completely changed the complexion of this game. After that, Buffalo completely took over. 171 yards rushing, only 27 passes for Josh Allen, 33 runs. And I'm sure Mr. Sapp will be happy about this. Only out of those 171 yards rushing, only 7 came from Josh Allen. That means they got 165 basically from James Cook and Singletary. So, one, you take the win. It was kind of a weird situation Buffalo had to deal with all week. They had the schedule was all out of whack with the snow in Buffalo. Buffalo got like 6 feet of snow, and they had to move the game to Detroit. So routines thrown off. Um, Against a Cleveland team that's talented, we know Cleveland is talented on both lines of scrimmage. They held Cleveland to just 80 yards rushing, basically shut down Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Um, I think Brissett might have been their leading rusher. So listen, it wasn't pretty, but the bottom line is, you take the win, you get off you snap a losing streak. You're 7-3. You are tied for first place in the division. Well, technically, yeah, you're basically in terms of the tiebreaker, Miami's ahead, but you have the same record as Miami, and you go from there. Allen was efficient. Looking at his numbers here, so I'll pull them up. Those are not the ones. Allen, 18-27, 197, a touchdown, and more importantly, no interceptions and no fumbles. So Allen, had problems with the turnover bug of recent in recent weeks. No turnovers for the Bills, no turnovers for the Bills, no turnovers for Josh Allen. Um, and they did what they had to do. Again, it wasn't pretty, but that's not this. Look, we saw a lot of teams who were favored struggle, okay, to win games this week. So it wasn't a week where you had the upper echelon teams just running through people. I mean, we saw what happened. We saw Philly almost lose to Indianapolis. We'll talk more about that game. So it was a week where you had some teams get upset, and you had some teams, again, that some of the upper echelon teams not able to quite with run away against teams that you think that they should be able to handle. Even with Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. with the exception of San Francisco, Arizona. And of course that was the only exception where you thought that could be an ass whooping, which it was. So Buffalo does what it has to do. Um, Listen, they have everything right there in front of them. I know people are still complaining about uh, their offense not looking um, the way as explosive as we've seen it earlier this season. But the bottom line is the most important thing you come out of this game is they were able to run the football minus Josh Allen. Okay, they were able to run the football. They were able to not only they did two things that they hadn't been doing for like the last couple of weeks. They was able to run and then stop the run. That Cleveland team, we know what Chubb and Hunt can bring. We know Cleveland is capable of running almost on anybody. So you hold Cleveland to 80 yards, you've done your job. Game of the week. Kansas City just continues to own this division. They continue to own the Chargers. Another close game between Mahomes and Justin Herbert. All every meeting that they've every meeting between those two quarterbacks has been a one score game, 30-27. Kansas City goes down the field and gets a touchdown that was going to happen they had enough time to once they had enough time on the board. Mahomes was going to take his team down the field and score the game winning touchdown. Mahomes is 24-3 against that division since he became the starter in 2018. 24-3. Um, Again, Herbert didn't play poorly. He played relatively well, but Mahomes had just too much time. Had too much time. You talk about going down the field. In essence, he went down the field in 31 seconds. Oh, not 31. Excuse me. No, he went down the field 6 plays, 75 yards in a minute and 15. Okay, 6 plays and 31 yards. 6 plays and 75 yards in a minute and 15. Kelsey, another big game for him. He gets three touchdowns, and looking at Kelsey, you gotta start thinking about Kelsey amongst the all-time great tight ends, amongst the greatest tight ends of all time. Like looking at his numbers right now, um, his career numbers, and statistically, he's probably going to end up the greatest tight end of all time. Statistically, he's going to have he's still what 33. I mean, he's still got a few years. It doesn't seem like he's slowing down at all. Um, Looking at his lifetime stats, I mean, you're talking about this guy he's approaching 10,000 yards. He has 68 touchdowns, um, 773 catches. So he's played. You know, he has a good 3 to 4 years left. He's going to break a number of these records. Like he's going to have 100 touchdowns. He's going to have probably 12,000, 13,000 yards. He's going to get 200,000 receptions. So you have to put him in a conversation. Have to start putting him in that conversation as one of the all-time great tight ends in the NFL history. He has what now 7. He has 6 1,000-yard receiving seasons. He's going to get 7 soon enough. He already has 855 yards. He can get that this. He can possibly get that this week. To be honest with you, he has to be. I mean, you have to start considering him again as one of the greatest tight ends of all time. That's all there is to it. Um, they have a thing going where they're going to be that connection they have is a special connection. And Kelsey again, even with Derwin James, Derwin James is one that I think that Derwin James is one of the more versatile defensive players in the league and a guy who can cover tight ends, but he's no match for Travis Kelsey as basically nobody is. I mean, I think with Kelsey you have to put probably, and I would consider this I think you have to put your best cornerback on Kelsey. I think you have to give him that Rob Gronkowski that type of treatment. Kansas City a long time ago, when Kansas City had Tony Gonzalez, Denver would put or New England would put a key to leave on him. or you would see Champ Bailey on the team's best tight ends when tight ends started exploding in that. I would say in that mid 2000s in terms of that era, when tight ends really started coming, like in that Antonio Gates, that Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez, when those tight ends really started exploding, you started seeing teams put their best cornerback on the tight end. He's at that level. I mean, you just can't put like you're not a linebacker. I don't care how great, I don't care how fast, how athletic. The most athletic linebacker cannot deal with Travis Kelsey. Period. So again, in the Chiefs, again, balance had tremendous balance. They had 163 yards rushing. That division is over. Chiefs are now basically 4 games ahead of uh, of the Chargers, 3 in the loss column, and also they swept them. So that division is over. The Chiefs are now playing for home field advantage. Right as of right now, they will have home field in the AFC. We know that they've hosted the last 4 conference championships in Arrowhead, and have lost 2 of them, by the way. But we know that they're a different team on the home at home as in comparison to on the road. We know Patrick Mahomes' record has been spectacular in the playoffs for the most part. So that division is over. We'll see what the Chargers can do at 5-5. They're still not out of the mix for the playoffs, but it's going to be a uphill battle in a loaded AFC. I mean, you could be 10-7 and miss the playoffs in the AFC this year. Is now is you have to have. I think you're gonna have to have minimum 10 wins to get to the playoffs. We'll see if the Chargers can get 5 more um, down for the rest of the 5 more at least. They're going to get at least 5 more to have any chance to make of making the playoffs. They still have 7 more games left, so they're going to have to go at worst 5-2 to qualify for the playoffs in the AFC. Games to note: Dallas, Minnesota. This was a Dallas just woodshed special. They handled Minnesota 40-3. Um, Listen, Dallas can be scary when they play the right way, right? So here's a game where Dallas goes for runs the ball at will. You have probably one of the most efficient performances out of Dak Prescott. Prescott was 22 or 25, 2 touchdowns, 276, was not sacked or intercepted. Quarterback rating of 139, played a near perfect game. Dallas, they only throw the ball, and Cooper Rush. The game was so out of order that Cooper Rush even got some throws in. So Dallas runs the ball 40 times, only throws it 30. Prescott only throws it 25. They run the ball 40 times for 151 yards. A big day out. Tony Pollard, 15 for 80. He also had 6 for 109 in terms of receiving. Had two receiving touchdowns, and Ezekiel Elliott gets the 2 touchdowns in short yardage. This is how Dallas should play. Like Dallas should play to their strengths of their offensive line. Um, they get ahead, jump on somebody early, and then it allows them to do what they do best defensively, and that is terrorize quarterbacks with, I think, the defensive player of the year in Makai Micah Parsons. I'm sorry, I keep butchering his name sometimes. Micah Parsons. Um, Minnesota is what I thought Minnesota like. This was a disappointing loss for Minnesota in terms of you shouldn't get embarrassed at your own place by 37 points. I don't care who you're playing. I don't care if you're playing the Chiefs. Like I don't like you shouldn't get embarrassed like this. So this was a very disappointing loss for Minnesota from that standpoint. But Minnesota, bottom line is, you're looking at Minnesota. They're 8-2, but when you go look at their point differential, they have a point differential. They have a negative point differential. Think about that for a second. They have a negative 2 point differential. They've been outscored by their opponents despite being 6 games over 500. That is hard. That's very rare that you'll see that. And then what that tells you is, it tells you that they've been winning a lot of close games, and it tells you that the team is not that good. They're not. I mean, there's not a. They are not a. They're a solid team. They have some guys. We know what Justin Jefferson is. We know the defense has a couple players on it, but they have a ceiling. Like they have a ceiling. Um, they're not a Super Bowl contender. And they're going to be now fighting, tooth and nail just to be a number 2 seed. Dallas is coming for the number. Dallas is in a position to where they'll. I think they're going to be challenging Philadelphia for the top spot in the NFC altogether. I think Dallas right now, I like again, I like you like how they're playing as far as now. Again, the Green Bay game could have been an aberration. They'll have those every so often, but I think for the most, I honestly believe for the most part, Dallas knows who it is from an identity standpoint. They know they in terms of running the football and playing to the pass rush, similar to what the old Indianapolis coach used to do when they would jump on you, and next thing you know, you have Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis coming off the edge. So again, it's very how Dallas needs to play is very simple. We've been talking about it all season long. You play to your strengths of the opposite line and the pass rushers, and they are a tough team to beat. Now, when you get in the playoffs, which they're going to make the playoffs, Dak Prescott as is going to have to win a game. Okay, so he's going to have to win a game because a good team is going to neutralize that running game and say, hey, Dak, go beat us. We'll see. We'll see. But until then, if I'm Dallas, you know, I'm gonna keep running the football and playing to my my playing to my pass rush. Now Dallas did hold Minnesota to 73 yards rushing. Um, Now they still have some issues with the run. I still think they have some issues with stopping the run. This game got so one sided that Minnesota couldn't even commit to a run. They only ran the ball 17 times. And look, if you look, they did have 73 yards rushing on 17 attempts, 4.3, which is pretty good. Dalvin Cook had 11 carries, had 72 yards on only 11 carries. So if this game is closer, maybe Dalvin Cook has 150, 160 yards, and we're talking about Dallas's defensive line again struggling to stop the run as they did against the Packers last week. So that's something that Dallas is going to have to show up. And again, we know even going back to last year, that's how you attack Dallas is with physical running attack, and and to neutralize that pass rush. So that is their weakness. I mean, you can run against the Dallas Cowboys. But that was not the case, certainly in this game. Minnesota just an embarrassing performance at home. I mean, again, I give Dallas all the credit in the world. That's maybe one of the most impressive wins of the season. Probably, I would say Buffalo beat Kansas City at Kansas City is probably the most impressive one considering the competition. But in terms of sheer domination, manhandling another playoff team, this was as impressive as it gets. So Dallas will have a lot of momentum going into Thanksgiving Day when they host a battered and injured and injury ridden New York Giant football team that's going to be coming off a loss, coming off a bad loss against the Detroit Lions. Philly and Indianapolis. Philly was very fortunate to win this game. Probably shouldn't have won this game. Um, we know Indianapolis doesn't have a quarterback. We know Indianapolis is a one-dimensional team as far as if you can neutralize their running game, then you can neutralize them as a team. But Indianapolis does have some talent, and they were able to stay in this game at one point, being up 13-3 going into the fourth quarter. Philadelphia, again, second straight week, a shaky performance from the Eagles. Um, they were able to run the ball. Well, they were not able to run the ball. I know they had 141 yards, but 86 of those came from Jalen Hurts. So the Boston Scott, Miles Sanders only had 55 yards between them on 16 carries. That should be a concern moving forward because you don't want Jalen Hurts with 16 carries. I'm sorry. You don't he's too important. That's too many carries. Rob Sapp always complains when Josh Allen gets, when Josh Allen gets into that 7 to 10 range as far as carries, he probably wants that number to be 5 and under. And that you don't want Jalen Hurts having the most carries. That's it. That's a problem. Um, they did hold Indianapolis to 99 yards rushing, 26 carries. They somewhat held Jonathan Taylor in check. 22 carries for 84 yards. We know how explosive he can be, but again, look, Philly did what they had to do. They beat a team that they should have beaten. Well, again, very fortunate to win this game. Was not impressed by Philadelphia in this game whatsoever. I mean, Matt Ryan is a relic at this stage in his career. He can barely throw the ball 30 yards. I mean, it's a struggle. Even the short passes seemingly it was seeming like they were going to get picked off. Like Matt Ryan is finished. Um, but with Jeff Saturday being a coach, they I guess this year is like, all right, you know let's basically tank for 2023 because they don't have any chance with Matt Ryan at the helm, and they don't have any chance. They didn't have a chance with any of their quarterbacks at the helm with Indianapolis. But Philly again fortunate to win this game, but you take the win. They are 9-1 and remain atop the NFC East and the NFC in general, and have of course they have the best record. They have the best record in all of football at 9-1, and they go to 5-0 on the road. They've been a great road team all season long. Of course, they only lost coming against the Commanders last week. New England, New York. New England does what it always does, and that's beat the Jets. Um, 10-3. They went on a wild ending with the punt return. Marcus Robinson with a punt return for a touchdown. Just like just a brutal way to end the football to lose a football game if you are the if you're a New York Jets fan. Um, again, no one is going to. This is not going to remind anybody of. This is not going to. This game. This game was a rough one to watch. Even if you somebody who loves defense like I do, these teams. The Jets, let me give you some of the Jets numbers here. So Zach Wilson, 9 of 22, 77 yards passing. We'll have more on him. He was sacked 4 times. Jets had 2 yards of offense in the second half. Two. For the game, the Jets had 103 total yards, right? Um, the Patriots, the reason why they were able to keep the Jets in the game from a standpoint, Jets played great defense, but the Patriots had 8 penalties. So that kept the Jets somewhat in the game. And the Jets defensive line was just all over the place. Quentin Williams was just a man amongst boys. They single handedly kept the Jets in the game. The Jets had 6 first downs total in this game. Three for 14 on third down efficiency. Listen, 103 total yards, and of course the big story. After the big story after the at the end of the game was the play of one Zach Wilson, the number 2 overall pick from a couple of years ago. He was supposed to be their franchise quarterback. I told you all season long I was never a Zach Wilson guy. I told you Zach Wilson, along with Justin Fields, Trey Lance, got 3 guys who I didn't think should be on the field as starting quarterbacks. That they needed another year under the belt, on the sidelines with a clipboard. He is at the top of that list by far. He has been awful this year. He has been one of the worst starting quarterbacks, if not probably statistically the worst starting quarterback in the NFL this year. He has 4 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He again completing only 55% of his passes. It's just like these numbers you just can't lie to. I mean, you can't hide. These numbers are what they are. And I it does not take long. It doesn't take long for a guy to recognize that a guy is not that dude in the NFL at the quarterback position. It really doesn't. Like by the second year, if there's not a significant amount of improvement in year number 2, then you just don't have you just this guy is just not your guy. Last year, again, as a rookie, okay, he was going to struggle. 13 games, he had 9 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, completed 55% of his passes. The team wasn't any good. Took his lumps as a rookie. Cool, I can deal with that. This year, the team is very good. Like that team has an excellent running game. They have weapons on the outside. They have some young talent with the receivers. They have a all world defense. It's not an excuse for him not to be better than this year. This year, there's been no improvement, zero. Like there's been no improvement from this year to last year, from last year to this year. And again, it's not like he's been knocked around. He's only been sacked 7 games. He's been 16 sacks. Okay, you can live with that's not that's not crazy, but as in comparison to even last year, but this guy's just a bad. He's a bad player. I mean, that's all there is to it. He's a bad player, and on top of it, no sense of accountability whatsoever. In the press conference, the post game press conference, they asked him, "Did you let the defense down?" And he emphatically said no. He's talking about the win. He's talking. I mean, his excuses had excuses. Now, I don't think Robert Saleh will bench him this week. I think that him come saying that he would had not committed to him was kind of like a, just to get his attention, so to speak, just to hold him accountable for his opponent. That was a way of him telling Wilson, "You were bad." Okay, that was his way of telling him. If he didn't tell him behind closed doors, but that was his way publicly of telling him how bad you were, right? So again, I never was a Zach Wilson guy. Even coming out of college, I was like, "Why? What is the hubbub about this dude?" Um, he again, I think that if I were running a team, uh, I might give him a half against Chicago. Outside of that, I gotta either go with White or Joe Flacco. Like he's not gonna be the reason why we don't make the playoffs. Again, we have a excellent defense. We have a solid running game. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna allow him to be the reason why we don't make the playoffs. And the Jets gotta be careful here because that was a big loss. If they had won that game, they're in first place by virtue of the fact that they had beaten Buffalo and also Miami earlier this season. That was a huge loss for the Jets. And I'm looking at this Jets schedule. It's not an easy schedule. The Jets still have so they'll have Chicago at home, a game that he absolutely should win, especially if Justin Fields doesn't play. Even if Justin Fields were to play, they should win. They should beat Chicago. But that's not going to be, that should be I shouldn't. The way they play offense, no game is a walkover for the Jets. The way they play offense, so they have that game. Then they're at Minnesota, at Buffalo, home to the Lions, home to Jacksonville, at Seattle. They end the season at Seattle, at Miami. That is not an easy schedule. That Lion game, the Lions are going to be playing hard, and the Lions have talent. So that is like there's no walkover. Even Jacksonville can be feisty. Like Jacksonville can be feisty sometimes. That's that is their the long game. I mean, they should beat the Lions. They should beat Jacksonville. So again, I'm trying to make a case for 10 wins. 6-4. All right, let's say they beat the Lions, Jacksonville. That puts them at what? 8 wins. At Seattle, at Miami, it's gonna be hard for them to win 10 games with that schedule. It's not gonna be easy. Even if they win the games that they're absolutely supposed to win. Bears, Lions, Jaguars, that puts them at 9 wins. 9 and 8 is not gonna do it. It's just not in the NFC. In the AFC, it's not. So that was a huge loss for them to say the least. Um, it was a game that they absolutely was absolutely a winnable game. But when you don't have a quarterback, it doesn't matter what the rest of your team looks like. I mean, you got again, he's so bad that he's not even a game manager. Like you can't even trust him to manage the game. That's how bad he is. Because this is an easy team to manage the game with. Like you have again, very good running attack. You have a solid running attack. You have an excellent defense. It would be easy to manage the game with this type of with the type of team with the type of team that they have that they've constructed. So he should be if you have a guy that can't even manage a football game, then you just don't have a quarterback. At worst, he should be able to do what Taylor Heineke is doing for the Commanders. At worst, and he has more talent than Taylor Heineke. But again, you got some guys that just um, you got some guys in the NFL like it's a combination of a lot of things. Number one, playing in New York, the whole pressure of being the number 2 draft pick in New York City. I don't think this guy can stand. I don't think he can stand up to that pressure. Even looking at him in the press conference, he looked like a deer in headlights. So there's certain guys that just maybe Zach Wilson goes somewhere else and resurrects his career. It will not be in New York. And I see. I'm be honest with you. I see career backup. I really do. I see career backup. And if I'm the Jets, I'm cutting my losses. I'm not even waiting for him to develop next year. Like no, because what you have to remember, what you have to do, the thing you have to think about when you sign a guy, when you draft a guy that high, is can we eventually we're gonna have to pay him more than likely. When we pay him, if we decide to pay him, what is the rest of our team going to look like? Can this guy raise the level of the rest of our team to keep us in a contention status? That's a question you have to ask yourself. The Eagles are going to certainly ask themselves with Jalen Hurts as these games and these years go by. Right now, they're in a position where he's still on a rookie contract, so they can build around him. But eventually, they have to make a decision to where they have to pay a guy. That they're going to pay that guy. When we pay him, will he be able to elevate and make up for those holes that are caused by how much money he's making and how much is going to have to be sacrificed with the rest of our roster? And right now, with the Jets and Zach Wilson, that is a resounding no. Like we cannot afford to pay him moving forward in the future the trajectory at the pace that he's on right now with zero improvement from year one to year two. So, excellent win for the Patriots. They're playing well, giving up like their last three games only like 7.7 points per game. Matthew Judon could be in the conversation for defensive player of the year, along with the likes of Sauce Gardner and also, of course, to me the leading candidate, Micah Parsons. So he's been tremendous and had another big game with a couple of sacks. He leads the NFL with 13 and a half sacks this season. The deep dive, the Commanders, they got another win, a very impressive win over the Houston Texans. Now you want to say, well, they should beat the Texans. They should, but at one point in the season, you would have said the Commanders that might have been a toss-up game, or you might even favor the Texans, especially when Washington was at 1-4. Listen, they probably haven't been given enough credit for the type of season that they have. You consider what they had, like everything they've dealt with off the field. You have an owner that is one of the worst owner that is might be the worst owner in all the sports, definitely the worst owner in the NFL. A guy who, is a horrible human being, let alone just a bad owner. And everything that this team has dealt with off the field, you got a running back. The running back gets shot. No Chase Young for the season. He's supposed to be now. He's been activated, so we'll see what happens when they play when they have Atlanta this week. When they host Atlanta this week, um, they again at 1-4. You're thinking about a top 5, top 10 pick. I'll be honest with you. That was the thought process. But to their credit, they've stuck with the running game. That's been the difference. Their running game and their defensive line. They have. If you look at the comparisons of how much they ran the ball versus when Carson Wentz started versus Taylor Heineke, they've ran the ball way it's not even close in terms of the number of running attempts that they've had. And Heineke's passing attempts are not even close to, of course, pale in comparisons to Carson Wentz. And listen, that's what you need to do for when you have a Taylor Heineke. He can make a couple plays here and there, but you don't want him throwing 35 to 40 times a game. You want that number to be, if to be around 25 to 30 max. So they ran the ball, and their defense has been spectacular. Their defense has ascended to a legit. Their defensive rank as of right now is they are 12th. They're 12th against points allowed, and I think they were like 6th overall. So in terms of total defense, I'm gonna check here now. They are, let me see here. Yeah, six in total defense in terms of yards. So, and again, at the beginning of the year, they were in the bottom half. The Green Bay game, from the Green Bay game on, kind of jump started jump started that defense. They haven't looked back. They've only given up, like I said, they only given up 30 points one time this year. They have played great during this streak, even against even in the Minnesota game. You know, you hold Minnesota to 20 points. You're doing your job. So listen, they've done it the right. They are playing to their strengths. Run the ball. Uh, Rely on that front four. Not giving up big plays. They are playing from ahead, which is important for for what they want to do, and what they're trying to do. And they're not putting and Heineke, as in comparison to Carson Wentz, is not making that drop dead turnover. Now Heineke will turn over the football. Like, he's prone to throwing an interception. He's prone to throwing a couple that sometimes, to the luck of the Washington, get dropped. But he does not have that catastrophic, for the most part, fourth quarter interception that just breaks your backbone or loses the game. Like, we seen Heineke, against the Titans. We've seen Heineke over the course of his career, the last 3 or 4 years, just have these interceptions that just, suck the life out of you and take the life out of your team. Um, Heineke does not have those types of turnovers. And for the most part, he would, unlike Carson Wentz, he does not fumble the football as well. Also, so listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Taylor Heineke is the future of the team. He's not. But what he is a nice stopgap until you get to your next guy who you hope is a franchise guy, whoever that guy is. We don't even know who that guy is. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe Washington takes a run at Jimmy G in the second in the off season. I don't know. We'll see. There's all, or some other name pops up that we're not even talking about right now. But the way this thing could end up, Taylor Heineken could be the quarterback this year and maybe next year. We'll see. But I would say this: the Carson Wentz era in Washington should be over. And if he doesn't play, they will keep that second round pick because he hadn't met some of the statistical incentives. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And the bottom line is the team has been a much better team with Taylor Heineke under center. Period. They've been a much better team. That's all there is to it. Um, but with all that said, they have a rough schedule down the stretch. This Falcon game will not be easy. The Falcons are 5-6, but they haven't been terrible. They have some guys, that they can run the ball a bit. Mariota, we know how he can move. Cordell Patterson, we saw what he did. So know what he can do. So this will not be an easy game. It's a game that they should win. It's at home, but it will not be an easy game. Then you have the Giants in back-to-back weeks. One of those weeks, a sandwich coming. One of those weeks, they have the Giants after a bye. Their bye comes late. I think they have the latest bye of any team in the league. They're gonna have a bye in week 13, which is, to me, unheard of. I don't know why the NFL made them have scheduled a bye that late. Like, no team should have a bye. I don't think no team should have a bye past week 11, but that's just me. Then you're talking about having the Giants twice at 49ers on the 20 day Christmas Eve, hosting the Browns, and they end the season with the Cowboys. Not an easy schedule, to say the least, especially in that division. But 2 games against the Giants, one against the Cowboys and the 49ers. But, look, stranger things have happened. They're going to be in the mix here. They're at 6-5. Uh, I don't think they can win a division, but they definitely will be in the mix in terms of fighting for that last playoff spot. But again, you gotta give Rivera a lot of credit, give the players a lot of credit for staying the course, keeping their focus through what has been a tumultuous just off the field stuff. And with the news that's been swirling around the DC area and around that franchise in regards to their owner, who is again a utter embarrassment to say the least. They still find themselves at 6-5 and in definitely in the playoff hunt. Stock up, Patriots. Patriots have, we had them stocked down and we had them most disappointed, but we gotta give credit where credit's due. They have won 3 straight. They have been defensively, they've been great. They've turned themselves into a legit uh top five, top 10, top five defense. Now again, I don't trust Mac Jones. I don't trust the offense to score in big spots. They've only scored, 213 points. But the defense has been spectacular over the last month or so. They are 5-2 in the conference, 2-1 in the division. Um, Patriots gonna be interesting. They're gonna be right there in terms of fighting for the playoffs. Right now, you look at the playoff hunt; they would be six. They would be six. Looking at their schedule, they have they are of course at Minnesota. That's a big game on Thanksgiving night. Host the Bills, at Arizona, at the Raiders, host the Bengals, host the Dolphins, at Buffalo. It's not it's there's some winnable games on that schedule. I mean, you're talking about at Arizona, at the Raiders. Um, Not an easy schedule, but not a murderer's row type schedule. Um, I'm looking at that like even if they drop to 7, the thing they have going for them is they do have a tiebreaker. They beat Cincinnati, so they have that going for them. Um, they have a tiebreaker over the Jets because they beat them twice. Uh, so in terms of who could catch them, I don't think Indianapolis can catch them. The Chargers, who knows with the Chargers? Uh, they listen. It's not out of the realms to say that they could make the playoffs. I think Cincinnati's going to make it. The Jets, who knows the chart. So I think it's going to be between the Chargers and New England. So at the end, I mean, it's New England, Cincinnati, the Jets, and the Chargers are going to be fighting. Those 4 teams are going to be fighting for 2 spots. Um, so they're going to be right there. But again, give them a lot of credit. It looked very dire about a month ago, especially with that situation with the strange press conference and Belichick with how he was handling the quarterbacks. But things can change fast in the NFL. I mean, you get one win, couple wins here, and next thing you know, you're fighting for a playoff spot versus a team that you know you that could be that's headed in a different direction. Say like maybe say the Chargers or maybe even Minnesota coming off of the loss they came off. Stock down the Giants. The Giants are the epitome of this smoke and mirrors. They're not that good. They're not that good of a team. They've been doing it with they've been doing it with a solid running game, excellent defense. But the bottom line is their room for error is very small. They can't play sloppy. They can't turn over the football. And I think the Giants are in trouble here. I'm looking at their schedule. The schedule is brutal. They have so many guys that are injured. Uh, they're at Dallas. That's going to be an impossible game to win. Then they host the Commanders, who are playing well. Host the Eagles at Washington, at Minnesota. Host Indianapolis at Philadelphia. That is a brutal schedule to end the season. Like there's only the one semi gimme. There's no gimmies on that schedule. Even the Colts, like I said, even the Colts can be dangerous with some of their players. Like there are no gimmies on that schedule. Um, I think the Giants are a team that is not easy. That is kind of easy to game plan. If you stay away from turning over the football, uh, you'll be right there with them in the fourth quarter. And and we've seen how quickly things can turn fortunes when you win. When you're a team that wins close games, that worm can turn quickly to where you're a team that starts losing these close games. So the Giants have been great in these one score games. You know, they have very little room for error, and those games can start going in the other direction. Now, again, they have a number. Their receiving core is just in shambles. It is not hard to game plan for the Giants as far as what you have to do. You limit Saquon Barkley and dare Daniel Jones to beat you, and let's see what happens. If their defense cannot turn you over, you're in great shape in terms of playing the Giants. And don't have the situation where they're getting penalties or Daniel Jones is turning over the ball. Then you have a situation where you're losing 31-18 to the Lions, which was again an awful loss for the Giants. I don't care how improved the Lions are. You should never lose a home game in November to the Detroit Lions if you're 7-2 and you're trying to have playoff aspirations. That just should not happen. So right now, I can see the Giants. I can see a nice 2 or 3 game losing streak for the New York Football Giants. Who won the week? Oh, it has to be the Cowboys. Cowboys they had a angry performance taking on coming out the Green Bay, lost a game that they should had no business losing. They took it out on Minnesota 40-3. They put themselves in position to where I think they're going to be challenging for the number one seed. I think the Cowboys already are going to make a um, run here and really challenge for the number one seed for the NFC East title and the number one seed. They will have the tiebreaker over Minnesota. They would have look at that conference record. Conference they do have 3 conference losses. But I do think that and I'm looking I think that these divisions are gonna come down to the last week. I think the Eagle Cowboy game in December will decide that division. I believe that the San Francisco uh, Seattle game will decide that division. Um, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Miami, Buffalo will decide. Those will decide that division. So I think the Cowboys clearly to me won the week. They should know who they are by now. If they play a certain way, they should easily win, 12 games and be a dangerous team in the playoffs. Um, Biggest disappointment, of course, Minnesota. You can't get embarrassed like that. It kind of even I think it actually takes away from the Buffalo win that you had a week earlier. You can't lose 40-3 at home. Like it just and consider yourself to be a serious contender. We know they're not serious contenders. Week 3, week 11 preview. So Dallas, New York Giants, Dallas, Thanksgiving Day. I have a hard time thinking that the Giants can win that game. Like the way that Dallas is playing, uh, traveling on going on the road for Thanksgiving, the short week. Has the home teams I think have an enormous advantage unless you just or unless you're the Detroit Lions, who have been awful on Thanksgiving. But even they have an occasional Thanksgiving performance that they play well. But I don't see that being the case. I think Dallas will runs over the Giants and wins going away. New England, Minnesota. I actually like New England in this game. I think Minnesota is good, similar to the Giants, and the Jets are going in the wrong direction. I don't think 3 days is enough time for Minnesota to recover from that ass whooping at the hands of the Dallas Cowboys. I could definitely see a carryover effect, and I guess a New England team that over the last couple of years have actually played better on the road than they have at home. Now I know they've kind of stabilized their home field somewhat this year, but they've been better on the road the last couple of years. So I like New England to win a close game. Cincinnati, Tennessee. This is the game I'm looking forward to probably the most. Uh, on Sunday, this game could be a game that could really, if you're Cincinnati and you want to challenge, you want to get a home playoff game, you need to win this game because um, you're fighting and you're going to be fighting for Baltimore for a division. It's a conference game. Your conference record, Cincinnati's conference record is only 3-3. Titans are 5-2, so this is a big game This is a much bigger game from Cincinnati. Titans are going to run away with their division. They have run away with their division. Baltimore, of course, Cincinnati's of course is going to be fighting with Baltimore for that division. Baltimore has the edge on them based on the game they played earlier with Baltimore won. So this should be a exciting game for these two teams who met in the playoffs last year, with Cincinnati winning. Final thoughts. So San Francisco destroys Arizona last night, 38-10. No surprise, even with no Kyler Murray, but I don't think it would have mattered regardless. The big story though to me is Jimmy G. Jimmy G right now is playing excellent football, 15 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He has a loaded team around him as far as the talent. Christian McCaffrey, the running game, the two receivers we know are good, Brandon Ayuk and also Debo Samuel and George Kittle. This is a scary team. The San Francisco team, I think could beat anybody in the NFC. And like I said, I've been saying this for like the last couple of weeks now. I would not want to see them in the playoffs. It's going to be very interesting what happens with Jimmy G in the offseason because I think there are about 3 or 4 teams who will convince themselves that they are a Jimmy G away from possibly contending for a Super Bowl. I think the Commanders, I think the Giants, I think about the Jets. I think there are there are a half dozen teams or so. I would put New Orleans on that list as well. That will feel like if we get Jimmy G, we can compete for a Super Bowl. So it's gonna be very interesting to see how he finishes this year. If they make it to a conference championship or to a Super Bowl, what happens? I to me, I don't I just can't see a scenario. Jimmy G would have to go out there and probably be Super Bowl MVP for them to say, okay, I let's maybe possibly trade Trey Lance. I don't know. Some just miraculous would have to happen, which is possible. Is it out the realms of possibility that San Francisco wins the Super Bowl this year? Like, is that the craziest thing? I don't think it's crazy. They have a total team offensively, defensively, with the defense and offensive line. The only question would be Jimmy G. So if Jimmy G goes out there and plays well, and this team wins the Super Bowl, then who knows what happens. But minus that, he's going to be a free agent after this year, and there are going to be a number of teams to me that are going to be lined up, seemingly thinking that if they sign him, they will be Super Bowl contenders. So we'll see what happens with that. Again, these divisions are going to come. These divisional games are going to decide uh the playoffs, who makes the playoffs, who wins the division. Like, it's really setting up perfectly. Like I said, that Miami, Buffalo, New England. Miami plays Buffalo again. The Jets play the Bills again. The Patriots play the Dolphins again. All those teams play each other one more time in that division, and that division only separated by one game, first place to last place. We know Baltimore, Cincinnati is going to decide that division. Um, the South and West are over in the AFC. We know that the Eagles Cowboys game will decide that division. I feel the North, of course, NFC North is over. Uh, and Tampa Bay, Atlanta, the winner of that, Atlanta's only a half game back. Um, and of course, San Francisco, Seattle. That game, San Francisco's in the catbird seat from the standpoint they're undefeated in that division, but Seattle's tied with them. The winner of that game probably will decide that division. So these games, this late November, December football, there's a lot to be decided. Um, Pound for pound right now, I think Kansas City is probably playing the best, but I'm not so sure. I still think the Buffalo Bills are the best team. I still think their A game is better than anybody else's A game. To be honest with you, despite the fact that they haven't played well over the last month, Kansas City's probably playing the best football, but I still think the Buffalo. I'm not out on Buffalo going to the Super Bowl and winning the Super Bowl. I'm not there yet. So we'll see what happens. Uh, have a great holiday weekend. I'm trying to avoid saying Thanksgiving, but because I know we know the true meaning of history of what happened transpired during Thanksgiving. But have a great holiday weekend with your friends, family. I will see you next time on the next edition of the Real Deal Podcast. So long.